employees and their families' paychecks.
Oh, okay.
Okay, the recording is on.
Thank you.
Welcome, everybody. You have 4 of us here and got a whole bunch more. I got 11 online, 10 online, so
I should move closer so we can just all be in the frame.
that works. You can do that. And then,
You're with us.
Yeah, I'll come over here. Unless you guys are afraid that I'm gonna
I'm not afraid of it. We're not afraid of you.
projectiles.
The closer the better.
there we go. And we're delighted. We have Sade on with us tonight. That's a special treat for all of us. And we're going to talk about deliverance from temptation. Awesome message today. So let's pray. Father, we just bless you and thank you for our time together. Thank you, Lord, that we just can gather in your name and that we can enjoy each other's company. We can enjoy your company. We just look forward, Lord, to a great evening together, just sitting at your feet, allowing you to persuade us of how much you love us and care for us and how you guide us and lead us in all we do. So we just thank you for this time now. In Jesus' name, amen.
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 Amen. So, where do we want to start? Anybody have anything they want to start with? Crickets.
I love with Sunday's message, and I put this in the comments in our Bible study group, is like you took so many of my favorite messages together and put it all into that one. And then obviously with even more revelation for 2021. And it just was really speaking to me. And I've been meditating on it a lot and listening to it on repeat.
Awesome.
Yeah, you kind of need to be reminded from time to time about how temptation works.
And we need to be reminded a lot.
Yes.
Yeah, not just time to time. I mean, I'm coming to the conclusion that I need to be reminded like all the time of all the things that we talk about here. That you just can't hear it once and get it. You need to kind of sit and go through it and then come back and go through it at a different time and go through it, because the circumstances around us change continually, and we get, it's like we've talked about many times, the manifold wisdom of God is like that onion that's got an infinite number of layers, and we just keep peeling them back and peeling them back. And with each layer, there's some new revelation, some fresh insight, some detail that you thought you knew, but you didn't know. And now, bang, there it is right there in front of you. So to hear, I love the fact that we continually preach Jesus and him crucified, that is the message that gets preached, because we need to hear that message all the time. And churches around the country, around the world, don't hear that message. Yeah. They hear the 7 steps to this and the 8 steps to that, and they don't mention Jesus in any of that. And that's pitiful. It's pitiful. It really is. And we can say that because, well, at least we've lived in that for 30 some years before we get the revelation of grace.
Yeah, I think one of the big disconnects with people is most people don't understand what happened in the garden. I tell people all the time, if you can't find your gospel in the first 3 chapters of Genesis, then there's something wrong. I don't want to say wrong. There's something incorrect about your message.
Yeah.
Right? Because you can find all of the gospel in the first 3 chapters of Genesis. And if part of your gospel doesn't fit there, that's your first indication that part of your gospel has come from the traditions of man. Yes. And not from the revelation of Christ. Right? And there's no shame in that, because every single person has had to have their knowledge of God corrected. Right? I mean, most Christians in the world would all, bow down at the feet of Paul, and oh my gosh, the great apostle Paul. Paul had to have his knowledge of God corrected more than anyone. Right? His knowledge.
Okay. Can you check and see she's okay?
Okay, we got it.
I definitely function like a man. I struggle to think while there's chaos. And not that that's chaos, but for me, it's chaos.
It's chaos.
So yeah, Paul more than anybody had to have his whole understanding of God completely reworked. Right. And so you take what's revealed in Jesus And then you use the Old Testament scriptures and the pictures there, the shadows there, and you meld the two. And next thing you know, you come out of it with the knowledge of God that has come from the Son of God.
Right.
Right. And you get all types of good things there. Right. And you start to understand what's going on there.
Oh, I'm sorry. Goodness sakes. It was an Amber Alert, but I heard they already found those little boys.
I'm glad they did.
Thank God, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, if you can't find something you want to preach about the gospel in the first 3 chapters, then you should start talking with God about that.
You bet.
And start weighing it with God. But I think a lot of people struggle to understand what the knowledge of good and evil is.
Mm-hmm.
They struggle to understand what it does to us. They struggle to understand how the serpent uses that to tempt us to take up our own life.
Right.
So that's just like they're blind to all that.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so if you're blind to all that, then you don't even know when it's happening. You're like Eve all over again in the garden, where you don't know anything about the devices of the serpent. There's just some snake talking to you now. And you don't know that it's the snake talking to you. You don't know what his voice sounds like. So you think it's the good voice. Right. So you end up teaching the poison of asps as if it was the gospel. Right.
Yeah.
Like the Pharisees, they had the oracles of God. And they were teaching the poison of asps, though.
Yes.
So they had the oracles of God, which was the beginning doctrines of Christ, but they were preaching the poison of asps.
Wow.
Right? In the name of God. They were preaching the poison of asps. And it's not because they wanted to, right? It's not like they were like, well,
it wasn't intentional.
No, they thought they were doing God's will.
Right.
Right.
Yes.
And so there's a lot of churches, because I know I was like that. Right. I was thinking my whole gospel was like the poison of asps, and I didn't know it. It wasn't on purpose.
I'm thinking the same thing. We all did that.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's like a coming out of it. But the church ought not to be in the place where we're still like Eve now. After all this time, after Jesus has come, after Jesus has clearly revealed what the temptation common to humans is, after Jesus has clearly revealed how the serpent tries to tempt us, what the serpent uses to tempt us, and why he uses what he's trying to get to happen when he does those things. We have a very crystal clear picture of that. What happens is when you know that, you discern the voice of the stranger. Easy. You walk in this world discerning everything. Like you can see a thing happening and you know straight away, whether it's the spirit of the living God or whether it's the spirit that's in the world. You know straight away whether it's the pride of life and the lust of the eyes and the lust of the flesh, or whether it's the spirit of the living God. Like you don't need to go off and think about it. You don't need to pray about it. It's just working in you and you see it. And honestly, that keeps your heart. That's what keeps your heart, knowing all these. Right? And I don't mean knowing intellectually. I mean like knowing God. When you know God and you're intimate with God and you're intimate with the heart of God, it keeps your heart from the world and it keeps you from the devices of the serpent. And so, yeah, it's a beautiful thing.
I love what you said about Satan being a one-trick pony.
Yeah.
Because I think that the church in general gives Satan way too much credit. And it's out of ignorance that they do that. We've been in churches and fellowships where, there was the demon behind every bush kind of thing. And you were always praying against Satan and never prayed to Jesus. It was like, get this backwards. You got it totally backwards. So it was, I liked when you laid that out. He only has one thing that he can do. And he doesn't do that very well, but he only has one thing that he can do to us.
He's trying to convince you that you lack something that's needed for a righteous life.
Yeah.
And he's trying to convince you that God lacks as the one that will give it to you. That's what he's trying to do.
Yeah.
And he's got no shortage of material, even though it's the same trick, because he's got death planted in the earth now.
Yeah.
It's not, the devil is not actively doing anything, right? He's not like in your house doing things to you. He's not over there in the gas station messing with the people getting gas. He's not in the church messing with people. No. What the devil did was he got the knowledge of good and evil into the earth, and he got death into the earth. And that's all he needed to do.
Right.
And so anytime you see anything happen to anybody, it's through those things.
Yeah.
It's through the knowledge of good and evil, and it's through death and tribulation. Those are the things that are producing the serpent's thinking and the fruit of the serpent's life. He's not out there actively doing all this kind of stuff. There's not enough of the devil to be doing that.
Right.
He's not like God.
Right.
He's not omnipotent. He's not everywhere. Right. He can't be everywhere. He doesn't have that kind of power. He don't even have more power than us.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Look, although people would say he does, but yes, you're right.
Because they don't understand.
That's right. Yeah.
If he had any power, he wouldn't have to deceive. A person with power doesn't have to use trickery.
That's very good.
The very fact that he has to use trickery is the evidence that he has no power. Right?
Yeah.
God didn't use any trickery. In fact, it's like a football team that knows they're so much better than the opposing team. They come out there and they tell them the play we're going to run. About to run this play. Try and stop me.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay? So God, there was no trickery. God coming to the earth in human flesh. They all knew, Satan knew who Jesus was. Jesus went around talking about how he was going to die and be raised again.
Yeah.
He was telling everyone.
Yeah.
He wasn't like keeping it to himself. It was no secret,
Right.
right? He telegraphed his play. Try and stop me, because he's got real power.
Yes.
You see?
Yeah.
There's real power in eternal life. There's real power in the spirit of faith. And so he didn't need no trickery. He didn't need no deceivery.
Right.
And the fact that you have to deceive, that means you don't really have any power, right? Deception is not a power.
Right.
Right?
Greg, that's an illustration I can definitely relate to, bro.
Yeah.
Roll
Please.
Tide.
Yeah, I know.
Wait, say that again. I missed it.
What was it?
He said he can, that was an illustration that he can definitely relate to. And then he.
Oh, roll
and
tide.
then
I
he
missed the
uttered
roll
that
tide
one of those
part.
ugly words.
I missed the roll tide part. You cut out.
Even have Alabama sweatshirt on?
Yes, he does.
Oh. But yeah, the deception of Eve, we missed that whole thing, and it's powerful for us because these things are pictures trying to discern our lives for us.
Yeah.
Right? And they're telling us about our life, and they're telling us about our life with God. And it gives us great understanding about what's going on. It gives you great discernment. It gives you great discernment for everyone's life. Like people ask me all the time, like I talk to other pastors, so they're like, you do all that counseling? Well, what Christian counseling did you go and get your certificate from? I'm like,
Are you qualified?
I don't have no certificate. And if you have one, that's probably evidence you're not qualified. And I'm just being silly. I'm not trying to fault somebody who has a certificate. You could have a certificate and still know Jesus. But what happens is God come and discerned everybody's life in Jesus. And he gave everybody a word of knowledge about their life and their life with him. He gave everybody a word of wisdom in Christ. He read everyone's mail, right? You ever felt confident when someone come and read your mail? Like all of a sudden you got a leg up and you know what's going on. I remember when we were coming to start this church, I was so confident. I was praying that prayer. The Spirit of the Lord is upon me. For he hath anointed me to preach the gospel to the poor. He hath sent me to heal the brokenhearted, to preach deliverance to the captives, the recovering of sight to the blind, to set at liberty them that are bruised. I was praying that every day, all day. And God told me to pray that prayer. And I didn't think nothing about it. I'm innocently praying that prayer for months. All of a sudden, we're a month before we leave to come start the church. And I hear a voice say, "You're not Jesus? What are you thinking? You praying that prayer? You can't pray that prayer." And I was like, yeah, I'm not Jesus. That makes sense to me. Like, I'm not confused. I know I'm not Jesus. You know what I'm saying? And so immediately I thought, yeah, man, I'm full of pride praying that prayer because I didn't know what I know now. Right? But that's all it took to throw me off and get me all confused and all out of whack. But then that guy came and read my mail. And the first thing he said to me was, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon you, for he hath to know." And that guy never met me or seen me or even been in that church ever. Do you know what I started thinking? And then he started reading my mail. All of a sudden, I was like, see if you can stop me from starting this church. Because I felt like I knew.
Right.
I had confidence. Right? And God come to give all of us a confidence and a boldness by discerning our lives with him in the face of Jesus. So we can know and we can discern all things. We can discern what's happening, what it means that it's happening. We don't need all these different signs. We have the original word of wisdom from God. We have the original word of knowledge from God. That's prophesying. You read someone's mail by revealing Jesus in them. You come and discern their lives. You show them their lives, and you use Jesus to show them their life. You show them God and God in their life, and you use Jesus to show them their life and God with them in their life. And all of the pictures in the Old Testament are all corroborating all that. And they're all coming alongside of all that to help build it up. So we're Eve, at the first man, Adam, the last man, Adam. So Adam can be a picture of Jesus. And so Eve is us. Right?
Right. Yeah.
And so if you could see what the devil was doing with Eve, you could start to understand what the devil does with you. And then you could see that, the devil did the same thing with Jesus. And then you could start to understand the way this works. And then real quick, you know the voice of the stranger when it comes.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
And what happens is it acts as your heart being strengthened to stiff arm whatever the Satan tries to use to tempt you to take up your own life, because you see it for what it is, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you don't eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, right? But Eve, I think we start off with the whole Eve thing completely wrong, right? Hath God really said that you should not? It's like, I used to think that he was trying to convince her God didn't say that. That's how it sounded to me.
Right.
And then all my word of faith teaching, that kind of corroborated that. See how he twists the word a little bit, just a little bit.
That's right.
And so you get distracted from what's really going on there. But when you look at the Hebrew, what he's really saying is, did God really tell you that you can't eat from all the trees? Doesn't sound like a good father to me.
Yeah.
Can you really trust that guy to give you the life you need when he's not letting you eat from all the trees? That's what it would sound like. See, he's questioning the integrity in God's heart towards Eve, right? That's the first thing he does. Right? And so that's what he's saying to her. And she's like, no. We can eat from all of the trees. We just can't eat from this one. And he's like, well, and the reason we can is because God said, that tree will kill us. And so that's not him holding back.
No.
That's him caring for our life. So no, he is full of integrity towards us. And he's like, you shall surely not die. You shall not surely die. Right?
Right.
You shall not surely die. You want to know one of the biggest disconnects with the universalist message? They say the same thing the serpent says. You shall not surely die, whether you believe or not.
Yes. Right.
You're going to have life no matter what.
Right.
That's the same thing the serpent said to Eve.
Yeah.
No, you won't die. Don't worry about it. You ain't got to believe.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That's one of the biggest disconnects with the universalist message, is that they come and say the same thing the serpent said.
Hey, Greg.
Right? That people have eternal life in and of themselves. But so Eve says, we can eat from the tree, and Satan says, you shall not die. God is keeping that tree from you because he knows in the day that you eat from that tree, you'll be in his likeness because he knows good or evil. And so Satan convinced Eve that she didn't have God likeness. And not only did she not have God likeness, she didn't have free access, or that God didn't provide to her what was needed to have God likeness. Satan come and said, God likeness is found in knowing good and evil.
Yes.
And God is keeping from you the very thing that can give you life and God likeness. So now it's not just that God lacks as the one that will provide her with life and God likeness. It's that she lacks because she ain't got it also.
Right.
Right?
Right.
So that now he takes her to the tree. Because if the tree's ugly, if it doesn't look like it can give you life or anything good, then what you want with the tree anyway?
Right.
You don't want a corrupt tree. I promise you, man, I love my wife and she does everything perfectly. But she don't like red delicious apples. And so she buys these other apples. And so when she tries to buy red delicious apples, she buys different apples and they're not red delicious apples. And for some reason, these apples are always rotten. I don't know why. And you can't tell because of the way they look. I don't eat those apples because they're rotten.
It's not. Hey, Greg, I got a question for you.
What's that?
Well, death had not entered the world when God said to Adam, if you eat of this tree, you shall surely die. It's probably like when Noah said, I'm building this ark because it's going to rain, and people had never seen rain before.
Yeah.
So my question is, what do you think Adam and Eve thought when they heard the word death?
I don't know.
I don't know.
You don't know? You don't have any idea?
Well, I mean,
Because
yeah,
they thought something, and
Well-
as perplexing as the term life can be, I say perplexing because I just admit that I don't have a full understanding of it. I think death can also be kind of perplexing. We can have analogies like dark and light, and union and separation and things like that. But God warned his children against something, and he used a term, but there was no context that was apparent from the beginning of Genesis for what that term meant to them.
well, I think the context is that would be to not have life, right? God, they do have some context because God promised Adam that he would decorate Adam in the fruit of his life, right? If you go read God baraked Adam, when it says that, when we read in the Bible that it says God told Adam to be exceedingly fruitful, that's not what it reads. In the Hebrew, it says God promised Adam he would make him exceedingly fruitful. So there is a context for having life and being clothed in the fruit of God's life, because in the Hebrew, what that would really read like is, I promise you, Adam, I will decorate you in my life.
Yeah.
That's what it sounds like.
Right.
So to be exceedingly fruitful would be to have life. It would be to be decorated in the fruit of God's life. It would be to, as the Apostle Paul would start talking about nakedness and being clothed with life. He talks about that a lot in his letters. He's drawn the comparison between nakedness and having life, being clothed upon with life. So God promised Adam he would clothe upon him with life. So the context for me would be, if they ate from that tree, then they wouldn't have the fruit of God's life. They wouldn't be clothed in life, but rather they would be dead, right? They would not be fruitful. They would not have life.
So all right. So what I hear you saying is then is death to them probably meant the absence of the life as they understood it, as it had been described to them by God.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that wasn't a trick or a trap question. I just wanted to hear your thoughts on it.
Thomas, you can't trap the Holy Spirit. And so what was anybody if they think that I'm going to answer from my own mind? I'll just say I don't know. But I like that. That was just for fun.
Yeah.
That was just some fun interaction. Between,
I have to head to my class, my Taekwondo class soon, but I wanted to share a testimony, and it goes into what you were talking about on Sunday with this message and just with our messages in general. What's been such a blessing is I've been experiencing so much healing and just this strengthening within my heart and my mind. And it goes in line with all the things that we've been talking about and teaching on Sunday and during the Bible studies, because it's like, as you're realizing, obviously, automatically, what is the voice of the stranger and the lie, and also like you talked about, and the ways that this temptation comes about, instead of it like overwhelming you so much and alarming you, it's like you begin to still remain in your peace and remain in such a rest. And it's been such a blessing, because obviously one of the things the defeated enemy wants to do is keep us in an elevated emotional state, and where we feel so overwhelmed. And in those times where we want to try to soothe ourselves or save ourselves or just make the pain or whatever we're experiencing stop, as opposed to with what you've been sharing and what we've been receiving, it takes the sting out of whatever lie is trying to come against us. And I feel like there's so much more strength that is happening. Like I remember it was probably almost 2 weeks ago now. And I was finishing up a power walk, and I was just having such an amazing time with God. And I started feeling all these harassing thoughts that were coming to me from a particular situation in my life that Jesus is still working through. And so I remember like automatically my first reaction was to be like, I just can't go back into this place again. God, I don't want to be experiencing this and these negative thoughts and this discouragement. And then literally I just saw this vision, and God has been continuing to show it to me, of Jesus like entering into my brain or being in my brain with me, experiencing these thoughts with me, and like pulling up a chair and sitting with me and reminding me that these thoughts are not your thoughts, that it's the defeated enemy trying to discourage you, that you are safe and I'm not judging you. You don't have to judge yourself. And like seeing like God take like a wand and illuminating my brain and my thoughts and my mind, and reminding me like I'm the God who's going to illuminate your thoughts, your mind, and your brain. And just as much as I live inside of your heart, I live inside of your mind and your brain too. And it's just been so powerful because I just have felt this strengthening, even in my thoughts and even in my brain, and even in my nighttime, in my dream, God showing me that again and continuing to speak that to me. And it's so funny because with all the counseling that I've been doing and different certifications I've been receiving, it actually and goes into alignment with what the Spirit has been showing me, because a lot of times people think science and faith don't go together, but it does go together. And so it's been so cool to see the same way stress or trauma and all those things in the world, yes, they can alter our brain, but how God created our brains and our bodies to regenerate, and how the Holy Spirit within us can renew our thoughts and renew our brain and the way that our minds think. And so that's just been so exciting. And I feel like it's been so powerful in alignment with the messages that we've been receiving. And it's like no longer is that sting happening, or where I feel so overwhelmed so quickly, or where you're thinking like, what is it that you can do to make this stop, as opposed to just resting in the goodness of God. And it's like, and I feel my spirit saying, oh no, that's just the enemy trying to discourage you. You don't have to pay attention to that. And then I just go along with my day and I'm back in my joy and my peace. And so I just think that's super powerful, because you don't hear those kind of messages that we hear a lot. And so you have so many believers that are always beating themselves up, believers and non-believers, thinking that they're bringing all these thoughts to themselves, thinking, what am I not doing right? They are thinking something's the matter with them. And I just think it's been so encouraging and strengthening to me to really receive what's been shared into my heart and into my brain just as much. And it's been making a huge impact, not only in my life, but in others that I get to share it with too.
Awesome.
Awesome.
Yeah, glory to God.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's
Yeah, I'll admit it's been kind of interesting past month. About a month ago, I got turned down by a girl again. But anyway, so what happened was, like, I had all these thoughts, like, what do I do this? Do I go after this girl or not? And it was so interesting because through this whole experience, it was like there was a voice, and this voice was saying, like, all these thoughts is your world, is the world trying to tell you, give you all these rules to, like, try to build your life and just preserve your life. So as I was going through, like, just a lot, and all these things went through my mind, like, I did hear that voice. So it's like sorting out all the thoughts of the world.
Hmm.
Have you guys ever wondered why we don't like it when we don't have peace, or we don't feel peace or joy or love or kindness or
Well,
patience?
Because we weren't made to.
Is it because we're designed to
Yeah.
have that?
Right.
And why we feel so happy when we feel love and joy? Like, why did we ever feel condemned when we saw the works of the flesh in our life? Why did we feel so happy if we thought we saw the fruit of God's life?
Yeah.
Like, have you ever wondered why that's even there? Why aren't we just indifferent?
Yeah.
Like, why aren't we just like, yeah, so what, man? I feel a little uncomfortable. I mean, listen, I go work out in the gym. I feel uncomfortable when I do that. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that uncomfortableness.
Right.
I go run when I would train. I mean, I don't run now, and I hadn't been to the gym in like 4 months, but when I do go, it feels uncomfortable, but I'm not like, what is going on? When I go run around the track and I feel uncomfortable, I'm not like, what's happening? Where's God?
Yeah.
Is God against me? I mean, have you ever wondered where those thoughts come from? Because we judge.
Oh, yeah.
Mhm.
We judge those feelings to mean something.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the judgments about what those feelings mean have come from the knowledge of good and evil, right?
Yes.
They come from the knowledge of good and evil.
Right.
Because once it got planted into the earth, just so everybody knows, the knowledge of good and evil is that it's good to have life and it's evil not to have life. That's the knowledge of good and evil. So you could say it this way: it's good to have the fruit of life. It's evil not to have the fruit of life.
Right.
And so the moment that understanding or knowledge got into the earth, well, some people, if you didn't hear the message, when God said, let there be light, it says light entered the earth. And what it says there is light made a distinguish or a differentiation between the darkness and the light. It separated itself from the darkness, or it separated the darkness, right? And then God said, it is good. What is good? the light is good. And so the darkness was evil. And so that's the knowledge of good and evil, that the light is good, the darkness is evil. The light would be life. It says that Jesus is the light that entered the world, and he was the life of men.
Yes.
Right? So the
Yeah.
light is life.
Right.
The darkness is death. When Jesus was on the cross, the death came to him. The darkness descended upon the cross. So the knowledge of good and evil is that it's good to have life. It's evil not to have life. Well, that knowledge judges. It makes determinations and judgments about your life. And so if you think you have life, you judge your life to be very good.
Yeah.
You judge yourself to be very good. But if you think you don't have something that is needed for life, you judge yourself and the whole thing to be evil and bunk. Right? And so the moment we see ourselves, if we don't think we have peace, the knowledge of good and evil is trying to get us to judge ourselves by whether or not we think we're feeling peace.
Right.
And we say, if we feel peace, then we're good.
Right.
It is very good. If we don't feel peace, we say it's evil. We're evil. God's evil. Everything's evil. And so that knowledge causes us to judge ourselves. It wants to become the metric by which we judge our lives. So the moment we see the works of the flesh, we subconsciously know that's not the fruit of life.
Sure.
Just like Paul come and said, the Gentiles who didn't have the law had the law written on their hearts. Their own conscience either excusing or accusing them. What's he talking about when he says their own conscience either excusing or accusing? If they think they see what they need to have life, their conscience excuses them. Right. All is well. If they think they don't have something they need to have life, their conscience is accusing them. Right? And that conscience that's accusing them, it's not accusing on its own. That accusation has come from the serpent's wisdom. So the serpent isn't there physically accusing. It's his knowledge or his wisdom. It says he corrupted his wisdom. His corrupted wisdom causes us to judge ourselves and accuse us. Right? And so what will happen is you start walking with God and you start to see that Jesus is the only interpretation of whether you have what you need to have life or not. What'll happen is it will subdue or numb the anxiety we feel if we don't think we have life. Right?
It will disesteem, right? It will disesteem your heart from that lie.
It will disesteem the pain. It will disesteem. Yeah. So if you sit here and say, I don't have peace, your heart would disesteem that. Your heart would say, that doesn't mean I don't have life.
Right.
If you don't feel joy, your heart would say, that doesn't mean I'm separated from what I need to have life. Right. If you don't feel love or kindness in any situation, your heart would say, that doesn't mean I don't have what I need for life. If something's breaking down in the world, your heart would disesteem it. It would say, that doesn't mean I'm separated from what I need for life. All of a sudden, you can feel uncomfortable, but you not feel anxiety about it. Right?
Amen.
You could see the fruit of death present, and it wouldn't fill you with anxiety because your heart would disesteem it. It wouldn't see it as a sign that you don't have something that you need. Right. And then you could be comfortably uncomfortable. Yeah. Right? It happens to me every Sunday. I'm comfortably uncomfortable. Because my heart disesteems it. But 10 years ago, when I first started preaching, every time I felt uncomfortable, my heart said, what's wrong with you, Greg? This is evil. What are we going to do? And it stressed me out because I thought, yeah, this ain't right. And then you start, well, am I in grace or am I not in grace? Am I in rest? Am I not resting? This can't be grace. This can't be rest. I got to shut down the church. Right? I was living by the knowledge of good and evil. I said, I feel uncomfortable. I feel pressed in on every time I get up there to preach because I don't know how to talk. And my mind goes blank. And people also think I don't know how to talk. And people also think that they can't understand me. And so this is evil. And every week I was getting up, judging my life and what I was doing by the knowledge of good and evil. Yeah. And it was killing me. Yeah. Right? And then what happened was, through the course of that, God is weeding that out of me. And slowly but surely, I started disesteeming that feeling to mean nothing. I started realizing, wait a second, my flesh could be uncomfortable and I could still be at rest. So this uncomfortableness I feel is not a sign that I'm not in rest, because I was thinking I'm out of rest.
Right.
And that was causing me to judge what I was doing as evil.
Right.
And if I can't get the rest back, then I got to quit doing this. Right. And my mind said, well, if I was really in grace, I wouldn't feel this way. And then my heart disesteemed that. My heart come and said, I could be squarely standing in grace and I could feel really pressed in on. And so I started seeing this pressing in that I feel, this weakness that I feel, this uncomfortableness that I feel is not a sign that the grace of God is far from me. It disesteemed it, right? And God did all this in me. He said, well, Greg, what do you think's going on? What do you think's going down with the big Jesus man when he's sweating blood? You think he felt comfortable? No. Well, do you think he was out of grace, bro? No. Do you think he was out of rest? No. See what God was doing, Greg, we're going to live by the knowledge of the Son of God.
Right.
We're not going to live by the knowledge of good and evil.
Yeah.
And he was moving me off of that. And so my heart judged this uncomfortableness that I'm feeling doesn't mean I'm not at rest. Doesn't mean I'm not standing squarely in the grace of God. Doesn't mean life is far from me. And all of a sudden, my heart that had elevated this uncomfortableness, like Lisa so beautifully pointed out, my heart counted the uncomfortableness to mean nothing. It doesn't mean anything. It's not a sign that I don't have some good thing. It's not a sign God's far from me. It's not a sign my life is being overcome. It's not a sign of any of those things. Right?
Yes.
Go ahead, Lisa.
That's okay. Those were your words. That's what you reminded me. You said that this, your heart disesteems this. And when I heard that, I thought, I have esteemed those thoughts. I've held them up above other things, above the truth of the knowledge of the wisdom of God. And it's, my emotion, my sense of soul, whatever, right? I esteemed it. And so when I esteemed it, I focused on it, I magnified it, and then I manifested it, right? It became my whole day, my whole world, my next moment. I took last moment's emotion into the next moment. And it just sort of, I've seen that spiral, right? I've asked you that question too, right? And you're the one who came up with that term. So I'm so blessed by that term. Disesteems my heart. I thought, that is what happens. That is what happens when I look through his eyes, through his wisdom. I am rested. my heart goes to rest. And what a feeling of relief. That's how I just describe it, because the turmoil just keeps coming at me. And, Shaddai said it just so, she described it so well. I got on in the last part of her conversation. It was like, yes, that's what's happening. She just described my experience too. I maybe all of our experience. I just love hearing the way God works. It's the same. Maybe it's just characterized a little differently. And I'm edified again when I hear it, because I'm reminded that it's this subtle, private, there's just he gives me a knowing that he knows. And then it's a relief, a rescue in that I am seen and heard and understood of him. I am fully known. And in that, that thing disesteems my heart from all these other accusations and lies, as if I have to contend with them, right? I'm of the belief, if I've esteemed them, that I have to contend with them, I have to answer for them. And I just appreciate that seeing him, knowing me, just puts that whole thing to bed. It evaporates. I don't have another word, but it disesteems it in the position it holds in my heart. And from there, I can make better decisions, better judgments. And from there, I am fearless. From there, I am full of love and compassion. I just find myself in that.
Yeah, our life's going to be born from the judgments we make.
Right.
What comes, we're going to be taken captive by the judgments we make.
Right.
And more specifically, by the judgment we make about whether we have life or not.
Right.
We're going to be taken captive by that judgment. I don't know if you guys realize, but in every situation we're in, we're busy looking for evidence of whether or not life is present or not. Yeah. And we make a judgment, and then we're taken captive by the judgment that we make. And so what God comes to do, and I'm going to talk about this on Sunday, living by the knowledge of the Son of God, right? Paul talked about that. God come to, you can't stop living by the knowledge of good and evil on your own. You can't do it. It's the power of God that will cause your mind to no longer go there. What God come and did was give you a different interpretation or a different way to interpret your life. And the thing that he used is the life that's in Jesus. And now, instead of looking at what you think you see here, or what you feel, or in the world around you, or in the country around you, or in the neighborhood around you, to judge whether or not you have what's needed for life, you start looking at Jesus and what you see in Jesus to judge whether or not you have what's needed for life, right? You start beholding your life in the face of Jesus. And as I've said many times, if you're living in the world, beholding your life in the face of Jesus, you could be nailed to a tree and your heart would say, my life is very good,
Yes.
right?
Right.
Because you're not judging whether you have life by if you're nailed to a tree or not. You're judging if you have life by whether or not you see life in Jesus. And guess what you're always going to see in Jesus? See at the right hand of God. An incorruptible life, a life that overcomes death, a life that overcomes corruption, a life that there is no lacking, a life you can't add to, a life you can't take away from. And as you wrestle with that, as you chew on that life you see in Jesus, you will always come out with the judgment, my life is very good. And the moment you have that judgment well up in your heart, my life is very good, you're going to be filled with the supernatural strength. And all the weakness that had beset you because of the death and the corruption in the world is going to be sent far away from you, as far as the east is from the west. And you're going to find a boldness well up inside of you. And you're going to find a supernatural grace well up inside of you. And you're going to find yourself walking in the earth, rebuking the devourer, rebuking death, telling other humans what God done to bind death, telling humans that death has been bound in their life, that death has no hold on their life. And then they're going to find themselves animated with the grace of God. And it's all about that judgment that we make, right? And it's the strangest thing. Man, it used to bother me every week when I'd get up there, and I felt so uncomfortable. I feel naked every time I get up there to preach. It's 10 years now. Which changed. I still feel uncomfortable. I felt uncomfortable last week. No one knows except Becky, because she knows me. Nobody knows but Becky, because she knows me. And I still feel uncomfortable, but now my heart has stopped judging the uncomfortableness to mean that something isn't as it ought to be. And so it's just like, so what? So what? What does it mean? It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean God's not with me.
Right.
It doesn't mean I don't have all that I need for life. It doesn't mean that I'm separated from strength. It doesn't mean that my life is being overcome. It doesn't mean any of those things. So it's like, so what? Hallelujah, right? And you begin to live in the world that way. And that's how you get set free from the knowledge of good and evil. And I think, listen, if I'm being honest, I don't think most churches even know what the knowledge of good and evil is.
They don't.
Right? And then ones that are tracking with some idea of it, they judge it by the fruit. Right? They see the fruit that can come from the knowledge of good and evil, and they judge it that way. They don't understand that it's good to have life and it's evil not to have life. It's unjust to not have life. That's the knowledge of good and evil. Why do you think we get so upset every time we see injustice in the earth? Why do you think we feel so agitated in our soul when we see something going down that we say isn't right? The knowledge of good and evil.
Right.
Why do you think we want life so badly? The knowledge of good and evil. Right?
Mm-hmm.
I want to share something that happened to me yesterday, and maybe you can help clarify it, because it has to do with this uncomfortable, maybe even anxiety that we get sometimes.
Mhm.
So I had a doctor's appointment in Baton Rouge yesterday, and Jay was going to drive me, and it was pouring down rain, and he looked it up on maps. It was almost 100 miles, 97 miles one way. And I just had this really uncomfortable feeling and even anxiety that I didn't want to go. And I mean, I've had the appointment for 6 weeks. And if I cancel the appointment, I'm going to have to wait 6 more weeks. It's hard to get in with this guy. And Jay says, we got to go. This is important. And I said, I don't want to go. He says, but it's important. We need to go. It'll be all right. Doesn't matter if it's raining hard. But I don't want to go. And so we got into a little bit of argument, and he was going to go to the gym. And I finally said, just go. Just get out of here, go. And so he left, And I just started to cry. It's like, oh God, you gotta help me here because I'm feeling so anxious, so uncomfortable, so such a strong, I don't want to go. And so all I can think of is the rain, It's 100 miles. I don't want to get on the interstate and go in the rain. So I just prayed because I keep thinking, just talk to God about it. Just talk to God about it. Because that's what you always say. Just talk to God about it. So I did.
That's the simple way with everything I say.
So I said, God, I don't understand, but I'm telling you, the anxiety was pretty
Yeah.
high. I mean, to the point of me crying.
Mhm.
And so I prayed, God, tell me what to do. And it was like, just call them. I didn't even know what I was going to say. So I look up the doctor's number and I call and I say, I'm not comfortable driving 100 miles in this weather because I didn't know any other reason why I didn't want to go really. And she says, give me your name, give me your birthday and all this. And she looks it up and she says, Mrs. Jenkins, you don't have an appointment today. Your appointment was changed to next Monday, the 8th. I said, well, nobody called me. I had it in my phone with 2 reminders for 6 weeks. Nobody told me I didn't have an appointment. We were going to drive 200 miles, 100 up and 100 back because I was sure I had an appointment. I mean, I did, but they canceled it and didn't tell me.
Yeah.
So for me, that anxiety, I don't want to go, I don't want to go, I don't want to go. And I didn't understand it. And then when it was all done, it was like, I wasn't supposed to go. God was trying to tell me not to go because I didn't have an appointment. So I felt like the anxiety was him getting my attention so that we wouldn't drive 200 miles in that yucky rain.
Yeah, I don't think God would use anxiety to talk
But
to you.
I was so sure. I thanked him afterwards. It was like, wow, we were going to drive 200 miles for nothing.
Yeah, but I don't see that God would use anxiety.
Right.
He would lead you by peace. It says he
Right.
leads you by peace in your heart.
But as soon as it was over and I saw I wasn't supposed to go, I had total peace.
Yeah, but he wouldn't use anxiety to lead you there.
Right.
So
He
how
would
did
give
that
you peace
work?
to not go. I mean, I have no idea.
I mean, I was sure I wasn't to go.
Yeah.
That was God telling me not to go, that I was sure not to go.
I don't know.
I think probably the anxiety was coming because you felt that you ought to go. You came under that law, especially with, like you and Jay having the argument. So, you felt that Jay thought that you should go, and that pressure was placed on you, like that temptation, right? That temptation to, so it's like Greg said, like, sure, you would have been led by peace if the enemy wouldn't have thrown those curveballs at you, right? You would have just simply had peace to just call. And probably going forward, you will in those situations, because it was a process for me too, being led in those types of situations.
What it sounds like Corey's saying, because Corey, you're really low. It's difficult to hear.
Yeah, it looks like you're a long way from your mic.
It's what it sounds like, and Corey can correct me, but what it sounds like Corey was saying is maybe you had peace to not go, or you had a feeling to not go,
Yeah.
but then the anxiety of what it meant if you didn't go.
Yes.
Because you hear,
Because
like,
he was telling me,
not he was telling you, but he was probably along with it, but all those things were true. It takes forever to get a meeting with this person. And you've been needing to get a meeting with this person. And now here's your meeting with this person. And now you're not going to go. And all the heaviness, because listen, Cindy, something I know about you, and don't take this the wrong way. I'm the same way. It's not a disparaging remark. You like to do things the right way.
Yeah.
And so you could have also had something that it's not right to just blow this off. And then have that present with, I don't feel to go. I don't feel to go, but then I sit on this side and have this thing
conflict
to say it's not right to go. And that's what it sounds to me like Corey was saying, that you could have felt to not go, but then you had these other laws that were saying it's not right to not go. And then the anxiety.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
But in the end, I felt like I didn't go because God spared us the 200-mile trip.
Mhm.
But in the meantime, all that anxiety, that's why I was kind of confused with, just because you have anxiety and you're not comfortable doesn't mean that God's not there.
Of course not.
Yeah.
If you would have gone, God would have still been there,
Right.
right? It's not a sign that God wouldn't have been there.
He would have needed to have been because it would have been a long drive. He would have-
Hey, but you could have gone and had lunch on the river.
That's
man.
right, that's
You could
exactly.
have gone and had lunch on the river.
Anyway, what I was trying to say is, my conclusion was through all of that, God showed up and spared us a 200-mile trip in that yucky weather.
Mhm.
However, he did.
Right. He doesn't need to use the unrest or the unsettling. It's not a tool of his. Jesus said trouble comes, right? Trouble's going to come. It's going to come. Anxiety is going to come. These things are going to come. But God is about peace, the peace he brings. He's about the message of peace, the covering of peace, the pouring out of peace. My peace I give, my peace I leave with you. You already have it. So being aware of the access you have to it, I'm speaking about it because I'm living with it too. Like anxiety has been something that's been throttled high for me from the very beginning. I got cortisol issues and all kinds of stuff because I'm living in fight, flight, or freeze pretty much all the time. And I find that normal and the norm for me. And then I've come to meet Jesus and understand he has no intention for me to live like that. But I was brought up into that kind of an atmosphere. My mother has anxiety. Nobody talks about it as anxiety. They just live in a certain way and they've written a story around it. They've come to a bunch of conclusions about the way life is, and this is how it is. And I remember being younger, and well, that's just the way life is. I had this little mantra coming out of my mouth. That's just the way life is. It's like, and Jesus has come to me to say, I have something better for you, my beloved. It's nothing like that. And he rests me, and I have not been able in a way to believe the relief and the weight off, and it's been such a ridiculous experience, but my default is going to be that anxiety. There's mornings I still wake up, frozen with sickness. I mean, I could probably have a sick bag beside my bed because all I want to do is vomit. Like it's about that level. That's kind of, like I said, the norm because of growing up in that environment. But the word of God, I can likewise open up the Mirror Bible or something, open up any little bit of passage. I have written some stuff on the mirror beside my bed, like, take no thought for your life because I've got that, says Jesus. And it's like, oh yeah. And then I was like repaired, restored, like fully. Oh yeah, I remember this is about you and me. We're in this together. You're leading, we're dancing, I'm standing on your toes, whatever pictures, right? All those pictures are bread to me, like food and nourishment. And it's, I've come to learn that anxiety has nothing to do with him. I have no obligation to pay attention to it or try to work it into my story because I find it there so frequently. That's not a reason to work it into the story. It's, what story am I telling myself about the life that I'm living or the way it's being lived or the way I'm experiencing it? I love what Greg has been saying. It's like when contradictions come against you, and it's like, oh God, you said that when troubles come, I'm here. I don't turn from you. I've not left you or forsaken you. I hear you when you cry and you call. I am here. And it's like, oh, that's the truth. I know that's the truth. But the anxiety is still, hi, hello, we have a story to tell. And it's just it's like, no, you actually don't have a voice in this, right? The voice of the stranger, the voice of the shepherd. And I mean, the only one I want to hear, when I can go to a closed room into the chamber, he says, come into the chamber for a little while. Let's spend some time to close the door behind you until the indignation be overpassed. All along, I thought in that verse out of Isaiah, I thought the indignation was others, others and what they're doing and the enemy. And what I found truth revealed in me. Indignation is this habit of anxiety in a way, and I'll say habit. I seem to identify with that. I made that a part of who I was, and I thought it was a part of who I was. Lisa's high strung, high edge, ooh, whatever, and whatever other story I told myself to make an excuse it's okay that I'm like, that's okay. I find myself, I had a miscarriage, one of my first pregnancies, and I miscarried, and it was something to do with RH factor. I'm in the room telling the doctor who's trying to help me, it's okay, it'll be okay. I remember he told me, it's not okay. And then I broke down and started to cry because that was the truth. But I hadn't realized, just as a young woman growing up, I'm consoling myself in this. It's okay to have that kind of level of anxiety and live with that. And it's stunning. It's stunning, the stories I would tell myself, about, oh, you can handle it. It's okay. It's okay to be this worried. It's okay to be this freaked out. It's not at all. I felt like that was, closer to the truth than anything else I'd heard when I finally met Jesus, and he showed me his kindness and his desire for me to be in complete rest, like 24/7. He would have that for me. He knows, though, he is pitiful, that he sees my frame. He knows what I've been through. He knows what we've all been through, and what has led us in that way. And he's our relief. He's our rescue. He's our comforter, our Alpha and Omega, the first and last word over our life. And all these things to me are just joy when I hear them, right? They're just joy. And that's why I join you guys again and again. Just, oh yeah. Oh yeah, I forgot. I forgot. And I know he's not even upset with me, but I have appreciated Greg's words over the last couple of years. Like, there's the opening that window, that fresh air comes in, that truth, right? That your heart's going to disesteem that. This is on him to do for you. Let him serve you with his life, because what you've been having before is not life. That's a habit. That's a hold your breath until you can't do anything else anymore. And it's just been beautiful what he offers us, the life he offers us, in comparison to what we can try and do for ourselves, living by the arm of our flesh. So, I mean, he doesn't need to use any of those tools. Nothing that has happened to us that's been wicked is he has any part of. He's just goodness, and his removal of those things from our life is his signature on our life, right? We're the gem. We're the signet ring on his hand. We're the jewel in that. We're the apple of his eye. He's not into shaken baby syndrome. Like, he doesn't do that to us kids. He's just this loving, loving, loving father. When I've gone to him with every, sometimes moment to moment, and there's the accusing thought, by now, Lisa, you should have a handle on this, and you should be helping others, and it's sort of like, by now, it's like, and then I look at him and I hear his voice, and he says, oh, but you're just fine. You're just fine. Right where I find you, you're just fine. And it's like, oh yeah. And it's like the truth, right?
Very good.
I'll say this with decisions too, is I find with the Holy Spirit, giving peace with all options, that first of all, whether you drive, peace with driving, whether you drive 100 miles in the rain or wait another 6 weeks. And I think when you start, for me right now, this whole dating stuff, when that gets confusing, it's like really, and I talk to God about the options, and it's from a platform of, whether I do option A, B, or C, I'm always at peace. There is nothing with any of those options that can add or take to life. And then from that platform, I say, well, even if this option can't add or take life, like, I'm just not interested in it. And I can just say, this is just the option I'm interested in. And that's what I would say about choices.
I think a lot of times the conflict comes because we're so exercised in operating from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And I'm really excited about what Greg's going to be bringing forth Sunday, because I understand that it's not a function of just willpower that can turn that off. But from operating from that place of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, that's also where self-justification comes in. And we're always trying to justify our decisions instead of just finding something in our heart and go with it. One illustration that the Holy Spirit continually brings to me is the fact that when it's starting to come near wintertime, a bird will fly south in the winter. Well, that bird doesn't know why he's flying south. All he knows is he woke up one morning and found something in his heart to go that direction, and that's the way he went. And I really believe that that's the place where the Holy Spirit wants to bring us to, where we just find something in our heart and we don't have to justify it. We just know it's there. We trust that he's there and go with it.
What a great picture. I love that. What a great picture. Free like a bird. That's beautiful.
The reason why we thought God judged us for our bad behavior, for the fruit in our life, for our nakedness, whatever example you want to use in the Bible, is because we're living by the knowledge of good and evil. So we saw a lack of what we said is God's life, or the fruit of God's life. We judged that to be evil. And then from there, we judged he must also be judging us as evil, right? So that's why we felt so condemned about the fruit in our life when it came to us and God, because we were judging ourselves by the knowledge of good and evil. And that would cause us to impute that same judgment to God. Sure. Right? You always put your own judgments about yourself into other people's hearts. Yeah. Right? If you think something about yourself, you assume everyone else thinks it also. You transpose them onto the other people, right? And it's the world has a term for it, self-fulfilling prophecy, right? Where you read into it what you already believe. And so we judged ourselves as evil because we said this ain't the fruit of God's life. Well, it's true that it's not the fruit of God's life, but that didn't mean God judged us as evil. Right. That didn't mean he was ashamed of us. That didn't mean that he said we weren't his kids. It didn't mean any of that. But we judged all that to be true because we said it's not right not to have life. And now look at me. I don't have life. And therefore, God must also think it's not right. Well, God thought it wasn't right that we didn't have life, but he didn't judge our person negatively. Right? He didn't become dissatisfied with our person. He became dissatisfied with the state of death we were in. God always said that I can be very satisfied in the life I can have with them. Even when we were naked and dead in our sin, God still felt satisfaction at the life he could have with us. He was dissatisfied with the state of death we were in. And really, for so many years, I built my whole gospel around the knowledge of good and evil. Even in the beginning of grace, I built my whole gospel around the knowledge of good and evil. All my understanding of terms, righteousness. Righteousness was, I was ugly to God, and now I'm beautiful to God. That was my idea of righteousness. That was born from the knowledge of good and evil. Because I said, sin is evil, therefore I'm evil. Right. God thinks I'm evil. Righteousness then, therefore, is I'm no longer evil to God. That's how I define it. That's got nothing to do with righteousness. I am the righteousness of God. I'm beautiful to God. No, the fact that I have eternal life in me is a testimony of God's righteousness towards humans. That's what it means that I'm the righteousness of God. God is righteous to give me his life as a gift. And that life now dwelling in me testifies of his righteousness. Jesus is the righteousness of God. It means that his life, the life that he has in himself, testifies of God's righteousness, his equity of character towards humans to give them his life as a gift. And so righteousness, to be righteous, doesn't now mean you're beautiful to God, or God says you're good. You were a bad, evil boy, but now you're a good boy because you believed on Jesus. That's not righteous. That's not righteousness. Righteousness and righteous is, I was created to be in a state of life, and I'm dead in sin. And so to become righteous means I've been translated from death to life. Yes. It doesn't mean God's view of my person has changed. Right. What it means is the life I have in this mortal body has changed. It's no longer just dust. It's a heavenly substance
now, just and unjust. The just are those who have life.
Yes.
The unjust are those that don't have life. Do you know why it's called unjust? Because it's not right for them not to have life.
Right.
And that's what God thinks.
Yeah.
It's not right for these guys not to have life. He never thought we were ugly. He never thought if I can beautify them, then I will want to be with them. He thought I want to be with them. Right? And so even most everything in the gospel, even the first 10 years, and I think I've been in grace since 96. I've been in grace for a lot longer, but in my understanding. Since 96, I started understanding the difference between grace and the strength of the flesh. And for the first several years of that, I still defined my whole gospel by the knowledge of good and evil, whereby I said God thought I was evil because of my sin. And I mean evil like ugly, bad boy. I don't mean filled with labors and annoyances. I mean like I am the devil, right? And then I defined my whole gospel by that knowledge. I was evil. I was the despised of God. God looked at me and thought I was evil. And then because of Jesus, now God no longer looks at me like that. Everything I believed about the gospel was still from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil.
Yeah.
But I called it grace. And I'm out there yelling it from the rooftop. Listen, I found myself in a strange place where I knew I was beautiful to God, but I still felt stressed out all the time. And I thought, what's the problem? Problem was I was still judging myself to be separated from what I needed to have life. Mm-hmm. So there I was, beautiful to God, but still thinking I didn't have something I needed for life.
Yeah.
Right? And so then he unwinds that whole thing. He comes and all of your revelation about the gospel becomes born from the knowledge of the Son of God and not the knowledge of good and evil. You begin to define God and his heart by what was in his heart before sin entered the picture. Yeah. If your gospel is built on the sin of man, your gospel's bunk. And that's what the knowledge of good and evil will do. It will cause you to build your knowledge of God and your knowledge of your life with God and your whole gospel around the sin of man instead of the original intent in God's heart. Right? And you'll get the whole thing crooked and backwards, and out of your mouth will come things that are supposed to sound nice, and you feel real excited about it, but they're powerless, they're empty, they're vain. Right?
Exactly.
And the knowledge of good and evil, you know what else it'll cause you to do? Intertwine your life with the world. Sure. Where every time something goes wrong in the world, you say it's evil. Right. And now you say the gospel is that's going to be fixed. Right? And so if I don't have some money, that's evil. It's evil not to have money. Therefore, the gospel is going to give me some money. I got a broken foot. It's evil for my foot to be broken. The gospel is going to fix my foot. That's how the gospel works. No, the gospel comes and says it does a thing where you don't judge your life as good or evil by whether you got a broken foot. You don't judge your life as good or evil by whether you got money, by whether you got a freaking house, by whether you got any of that stuff, by whether you got the right president. You're not busy judging whether you have a righteous life by anything going on around you. That's called living by the knowledge of the Son of God, right? And now your whole gospel has to change because now you've been busy preaching the gospel as if the gospel is about how your life is evil, but you can get the good from the world and then your life can be very good. If you can just get the things in the world straight, because Jesus died so you would never have anything bad happen. Jesus died so you can have the perfect life the world could give you. And if you could just gather the good life in the world to yourself, then you could have a life that is very good. And Jesus made it possible for you to do that. That's the knowledge of good and evil. That's death.
Yes.
That's the tree Jesus came to take an axe to the root of.
Right.
And for the first 10 years of my life in grace, I was still living by that. Sorry, Billy.
Go ahead, Billy.
You know, when you said, Greg, the one trick pony, that really touched me because for many years, that's what I thought, and the enemy is not coy. He is very upfront and says that he is what? The accuser. And he accuses us all the time. If you are, you wouldn't, right? But it's not about us. It's not about our judgment. It's about the judgment of our Father. and how he judged us righteous. And so the accuser comes and says, well, Jay, you should have done this, or Cindy, you should have done that, or Linda, you should have did this, or Billy, you should have did that. And if you didn't, are you really the son and daughter of God? And he does it every day, all the time. And that's the one trick pony. And he did it to our brother Jesus. If you really are the son, so that I really got a kick out of that one trick. And that's exactly what he does to everyone every day.
And what's the evidence that he uses?
I'm sorry?
What's the evidence that he uses to ask the question?
It's always a lie.
He points to something.
He points to the fruit in your life.
Oh yeah, he points definitely. He points to the fruit of our life. He said, look at this. If you wouldn't have done that, this wouldn't have happened. But it's all a lie, right?
The power to believe.
Our life is in the resurrection of Christ and in our judgment of righteousness of who we are, his sons and daughters.
The power to believe that you're a son and daughter of God is to be persuaded that you have the life of God.
Yeah.
Right.
That's the power.
Yeah.
To be
right.
persuaded.
Absolutely.
You can't be persuaded outside of that. The power to be confused about whether you're a son or daughter of God is the death and the tribulation and the lack that's in the world. So you can't convince yourself you're the son or daughter of God because you think God thinks you're beautiful. You have to be persuaded that you have his life.
Yes.
And
right.
anything that tries to convince you that you don't have his life is trying to war against God calling you son or daughter.
Right.
The reason Jesus was fully persuaded he was the son of God is because he knew the life he had, even in this mortal body, it was from above. He knew that Joseph wasn't his father. And if Joseph wasn't his father, then where did the life come from that he had? Because all of our life has come from the seed that was in our father.
Right.
And so Jesus knew the life that he had come from the seed that was in his father. Well, Joseph wasn't his father. So who was his father? God.
Yes.
So guess whose life he had? He had the Father's life. That life that he had from the Father, that life testified something to him, that he is the Son of God. That's what persuaded him. That's why John would come and say, Jesus is the light that lights up every man. And to all those who grab a hold of that truth, they shall receive strength from who? Father, right. From his seed to do what? Appear as the sons and daughters of God. So the life of God manifested in a human being, the Son of Man, that testified that mankind is the sons and daughters of God.
Right.
That's the evidence, the life that was in Jesus is the light of men. What light? That we are the sons and daughters of God and that God is our Father. And to all of us that grab a hold of that, we will be persuaded and receive strength to appear. And so for the longest time, I was just like, oh, I'm the Son of God. Yeah. All the while, I wasn't persuaded.
Right.
The scripture said I was, so I said so. And I knew I was beautiful to God, so I said so. But then all the while, I still would get confused all the time. Why? Because I was still living by the knowledge of good and evil. I was still judging whether or not I had life or what I needed for peace and love and joy by what was going on in the world around me. Right? So something bad would happen in the world, and I would look at that and I would say, well, that's a sign that I'm separated from what I need for life. And I would judge it to be evil. And after I judged it to be evil, then I would say, I don't have what I need to have life. And then I would feel the confusion, the temptation. And then I would think if I could straighten that out, then I could have the life that I say I'm supposed to have.
Right.
Right?
Well, and it says,
it's the life. Why am I talking about life and death so much? Because when I look back at my ministry, I described the fruit of what life and death did to people. And I pointed out, it's wrong to think that way. That's a lie. This wisdom is corrupt. All those things were true. But me telling everybody the things that were true was not the power for the truth to be born inside of them. The thing that is the power is for people to be persuaded that they have the life of God now, and that the death in the world is not a sign that they don't have the life of God, and that the uncomfortableness that they feel or the fruit they see in their life is not a sign that they don't have the life of God. That's the power. And so we've been busy with the external stuff, trying to use our knowing of the external stuff to try to have life. And it's bankrupt. It's empty. It's broken. It can't give you life. The thing that can give you life is, guess what? Life. And so let us talk about the life we have in God. And let us talk about what it means that we have the life of God. What it means to have the life of God means that nothing in this world can separate you from having life. Nothing in this world needs to be added to you so you can have peace and love and joy and satisfaction. That's what it means to have the life of God. And as you start wrestling with that, should things go bankrupt around you, or should you have a tribulation or a hard time, you won't judge that tribulation to mean you don't have what you need to have peace. You don't have what you need to have a righteous life. You won't judge it that way. And then you'll find yourself animated with the grace of God. And so that's what we need to be busy with. Not that if we can get a miracle, then we have life. That's living by the knowledge of good and evil. If you think you need to get a miracle to have life, you're living by the knowledge of good and evil. And you're rejoicing that you have authority over the demons and you have authority over death, instead of rejoicing that your name's been written in the book of life. And so all the good we could see happen, it's not that it's evil to get a miracle. I prayed for 3 people yesterday to get a miracle. But I didn't pray thinking the power for them to have life was if they can get a miracle. I didn't think the power for them to have peace and love and joy is if they can get a miracle. I said the power for them to have life is the resurrected Jesus. And then I prayed, right? And so even in the church, man, we're busy judging whether people have life by whether or not their dreams have come true.
Right.
What dream? Your dream for ministry? Your dream for a spouse? Your dream for kids? Woe is us if our dreams are wrapped up in the corruptible things in this earth. Our dream is that we could have an incorruptible life. Let us understand that's what our dream is. Right. Now let us see our dream has come true in the resurrected man Jesus. And now let us find the strength that we were created to have from that revelation that all our dream has come true. Fairy tales can come true. They can happen to you. Right? When you have eternal life.
Yeah, there you go.
What happens, man, we see our dream has come true. And that fills us with a strength and a passion. And then we can enjoy the things in life because we're not looking to them to add to us. Right. We see we've been added to exceedingly abundantly above we could ever ask or think. And we stop judging life by the knowledge of good and evil, right? And we don't judge whether people have life by that. And then we start praying from that foundation. And we preach from that foundation. If I'm being honest, man, when I was in Bible school, everything I preached filled people with lust. Lust for the life they could gain from the world if we could get a miracle. Or if we could get them to give enough money so they could have prosperity. We were all filling everyone's hearts with lust. We were pointing to the good in the world, and we were saying, if we can use our ability to pray enough, to believe enough, to give enough, to minister enough, we can get the good from the world added to us, and then we can have the peace that we want. We were filled with the pride of life, the lust of the eyes, and the lust of the flesh. We had a desire for life, but then we were lifted up in our hearts saying we could gather life from the good we could gain in the world, and we said the gospel's the way to do it. Oh, man, that's the most corrupt thing there could ever be. It is the most corrupt thing that could ever be. You take the most powerful, sweet thing in the world and you fill it with leaven. And then you go declaring it like it's the good news. The good news is you can have life from the world. That's the good news? The good news is, well, you couldn't have life from the world before, but now Jesus has come so you can have the corruptible life that you always wanted. Yeah. Oh, hallelujah.
Corruptible life.
Listen, man, right. I'm beside myself, man. I'm beside myself because it's just like the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Yes. Where Satan was like, no, you shall not surely die. God knows that God likeness, life is found in this tree. Eve, let's go look at the tree. What does it say about the tree? It looked good for food. Okay. Food. Food for what? Not like, well, I like to eat an apple and I'm hungry and let me eat an apple and that could be, it looked good for food. No. It looked like it could feed me with God likeness. It looked like it could add godliness to me. It looked like it could decorate me in the fruit of God's life. That's what it means that it looked good for food. It looks wise. What this serpent is saying looks wise. Look at the good fruit on that tree. That looks like it could feed me with the life I long for. What do you think the world looks like? It looks good for food. Let's just be honest. I'm just going to be honest, man. I thought it looked real good for food, that if I could get in the Olympics and win the Olympics and break all those world records and use my great ability that God gave me, I got to be honest, that looked like it could feed me with peace and love and joy and kindness and long suffering and meekness. It looked like it could be the power unto godliness. It'd be the power unto my ministry. It looked good for food, right? And so that's what the world is. The world is the serpent telling us, doesn't it look good for food? Just use your ability. If you could gain these things, that will feed you the life you want. And we look at it and we're like, yeah. Because listen, it doesn't sound bad to win the Olympics. It doesn't sound bad to have a big gold medal right now. It doesn't sound bad to break the world records. And those things in and of themselves are not bad. It's not evil to desire a wife. It's not evil to desire a husband or to desire things to go well. It's not evil, but it's when you think your life is braided together with how things go, and you're looking to those things as the evidence of whether you have life or not, or whether you have what's needed to have peace and love and joy. That's when it becomes evil. You take a thing that was benign, that's innocent, and you make it into God. Right. And that's why it's called idolatry. And that's why Jesus said, mammon is your God. Because you're looking at the good in the world and you're saying, if I can heap it unto myself, then that is the power unto a righteous life. And so those things that you say you need to have peace, those things are your God. Right? Listen, I don't want to be sick. I don't believe I will be sick. But should I get sick, I can promise you this. Never in a million years am I going to think the power unto the peace of God is if I cannot be sick anymore. I'm not going to turn my desire for health into my God and judge whether or not God is with me by my health, or judge whether or not I have peace by my health. That's corrupt. That will make people sick. What will happen is you'll have your meetings and you'll get a bunch of miracles like we always did. And then a week later, the people are all jacked up again. But who cares? We got our miracles.
That's right.
It's like we could believe for a week we're the sons of God because we got some miracles, right? And we're hallelujah. But then the very next week we're all like, "Where's God? Oh, we got to get it. We got to do it again."
Isn't that what it? And isn't that what it means when it says an adulterous generation seeks after a sign? I mean, I heard that come into my head a minute ago, and then I kind of just meditating on that. I felt like for me, he was. The Spirit was kind of saying, well, see, Lisa, that's what it is when you're courting anxiety. And I thought, oh, geez, it is, isn't it? I'm not being married to my Ishi, to my Jesus, to my peace. I'm not married to that. I'm not looking at his resurrection. I'm busy looking in the opposite direction at maybe some ripped stomach or something, which is anxiety. I am courting that as if I could figure that out and get a hold of that, I could put that in a container and take care of it. You know what I mean? Like my own sort of figuring out, where is it coming from? How is it being used? How, you know what I mean? Just trying to wrap my head around it so I can put it in a place that feels comfortable. And it's like, Lisa, that's courting anxiety. An adulterous generation is looking for a sign that they can that they can control. I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to chew on that some more myself. I mean, it just came to me when you were talking about where's my eyes, and unless I can, and that's my desire. I feel like it's possible. It's only the Spirit of God that has suggested to me, Lisa, it's possible to be without judgment, accept my judge. I'm like, wow, what a thought, like how accepting and receiving and when it's only his judgment that is manifest and operating me. Jesus made himself of no reputation. He didn't have his own opinion. It wasn't, I don't say anything the Father doesn't say. And to me, those are the things that they keep flooding me. It's like, so beautiful, so beautiful. Just look at what he's saying. And Christ in you, the hope of glory. I mean, he's in us. I'm in him.
Certainty of life. Christ in you, the certainty of life.
It's him, and he's here. And I don't need, you know, I don't need to court anything else or anyone else. And I guess that's the temptation, right? And he's the way I escape. He makes a way to escape every temptation. The temptation to take that up, to take it on, to try to resolve it, to, you know, think about a psychiatrist, psychology, medication. And it's not to say those things. I find that there's kindness and love. God makes his rain to fall on the just and the unjust, the sun to shine on the just. And I just feel like he's so kind that even in those things, he would bring love and kindness to me if I were to walk that way. And for certain, he would make me to know his kindness. It's like it says in Hosea, right? Where Hosea is talking about his wife, and he says, she thinks the corn and the wine are her lovers, that those things have enriched her and made her, you know, adorned. All those things are coming from me. She just doesn't see it. Every good and perfect gift is coming from God. Our very life, in him we live and move and have our being, the source, right? He's the source of all of it. And it's as that starts to open up more and more, and it's a reality that's just kind of like taking the crust off of off of my eyes, and then resting into that. And then I find myself it's in my hearing without my sort of, what do you say, like conjuring it. I'm not conjuring it. It flows into or out of the peace and the rest, where, what did you say? Swaddled, right? Swaddled with light and life. And in that place, just a continual speaking over us in love, right? Joy, singing over us with joy. Those are the things that he's saying and singing. And it's not a condemnation. I didn't find it a condemnation, what he said just now, but to have my eyes someplace else, and why that anxiety seems to have such strength. And it's like, oh, doesn't that change the picture, change the paradigm? And I mean, that's his gift and skill. It's the shift. That's his ability, right? To take us out of the paradigm and present us with a whole new, right? He brings us to a wide open place where all things are possible with him. And it's with man, it's impossible, but with him, all things are possible. And it keeps blowing my mind every time. And it's in a good way, right? In a good way. The peace that passes all understanding doesn't need my understanding to appear, to manifest, and to bring joy. I'm not even, but I do appreciate, Greg, the things you're saying, just kind of clinches it and edifies in such a huge way. That's what's been happening. How beautiful, right? How beautiful. So zest, right? And now a knowledge according to the truth. So how blessed are we, right?
Yeah, you so many times what I just said about the miracles, people will judge what I say by the knowledge of good and evil, where they say miracles are good, not getting miracles of evil. And they'll use that knowledge to judge what I just said about not looking to miracles to find peace and love and joy.
Yeah.
And then they'll say, he's against miracles. That's evil.
Right. Yeah. Missed the point completely.
Miss the whole point.
Yeah.
Miss the whole point. You'll miss the whole point if you think the power for peace is wrapped up in what goes on in the world.
Right.
You'll miss the whole point. You'll miss the whole point if you don't see
the love of God is found within the life he gave us. That's where the love of God is found. When God wants you to experience love, he speaks life over you.
Yeah.
That's how you experience love. John come and said, beloved, what manner of love the Father has been bestowed upon us that we should be called the sons of God.
Mhm.
And he just talked about how the word of life was made flesh in Jesus.
Yeah.
And he says, when we see that God manifested life in Jesus, that was the declaration of his love for us. So the way you're animated with the love of God is by hearing the word of life and beholding the word of life. And the thing that wars against you experiencing the love of God is the death that the serpent planted in the earth.
That's right.
Right?
Yeah.
And he's all the time trying to get you to look at it.
Right.
He's all the time trying to get you to look into the world. He doesn't first show you the death in the world. He shows you the good that's in the world. And he says, doesn't that look good for food?
Oh, yeah.
And we're like, yeah, man, that's nice. And then he gets us looking there. And we're intertwined. And now we're looking there. Well, guess what is in the earth is death.
Right.
And so once he gets you looking at the good, it isn't very long before death is like, well, bam. And you're like, oh. And then where's God? Right? And then you're going to work your ability to try to get a miracle to believe God's with you.
Right.
Or to believe that you're righteous.
Yeah.
Or to believe that you have what you need to have peace.
Yeah.
Right?
Or to overcome the death that you see in front of you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Amen. Amen. It's a good place to call it quits.
Yeah, glory to God.
Thank you all.
Thank you so much.
Delight having everybody with us tonight.
Good night.
So good.
Night,
Hey,
everybody.
Gwen, thank you. Thank you so much. Bless you.
Good night, y'all.
Good night.
I'm going.